Hello, students. The chapter which we are going to deal with is about two strong women from marginalized communities who fought against injustice and oppression. The chapter's name is Memories of Childhood. It comprises two stories: The Cutting of My Long Hair by Zitkalasa and We Too Are Humans by Bama. In this video, we will discuss the first story, The Cutting of My Long Hair by Zitkalasa. So let's proceed. The world has been gripped in the web of stratification, oppression, and discrimination at many levels. While the adults have grown used to this, the innocence of childhood does not understand hatred and prejudice. However, their keen, observant eye is capable enough to notice any form of injustice and discrimination. When subjected to such evil practices, their sensitive minds and hearts are deeply affected. Perplexed, they often resist in their own simple ways. In the lesson, the two girls describe their encounters with inequality. While Bama was subjected to caste discrimination and untouchability, Zitkala was a victim of racial prejudice. Zitkala was packed off to a European missionary school where, being a local tribal, she was looked down upon. Her precious, long, and heavy hair, which was her pride, was shingled. She tried to resist with all her might, but ultimately she was forced to give up her struggle. On the contrary, Bama, who witnessed the malpractice of untouchability, decided to blur the difference of caste with the light of education. Under the guidance and supervision of her elder brother, she judiciously utilized her anger and sense of rebellion to study hard and outwit any form of prejudice. She understood that a social change would be possible only if these so called lower caste make an effort to study and thus make progress. Though both the protagonists try to protest against the injustice they face, the paths they chose are remarkably different. Zitkala continued to rebel by criticizing the evils of racial prejudice through her works. Bama opted for a more subtle way to carry forth her silent yet effective remonstration. Gertrude Simmons Bonin was born on February 22, 1876, in South Dakota, US. She was a songwriter, editor, musician, teacher, and reformer who strove to expand opportunities for Native Americans and to safeguard their cultures. She was the co founder of the National Council of American Indians in 1926. Her articles were published in the Atlantic Monthly and in Harper's Monthly. The story highlights the women's oppression, class barriers, racialism, discrimination, and exploitation that tend to pull them down. It also advocates the statement that seeds of rebellion are sown early in life. Children may be young and innocent, but they cannot tolerate injustice if they are determined. The lesson has a universal theme which highlights the reaction to the hatred and cruelty against the downtrodden, discrimination on the basis of caste, creed, and social hierarchy. We come across three main characters in the story: Gertrude Simmons Bonin, the narrator of the story; Judwin, a friend of Zitkalasa; a pale-faced woman, a member of staff at Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Carlisle. Summary of the story. It was the writer's first day at school. A large bell rang for breakfast. Shoes clattered on bare floors. Many voices murmured. A pale-faced woman with grey hair came up after them. They were placed in a line of girls who were marching into the dining room. She walked noiselessly in her soft moccasins. She felt like sinking to the floor, for her blanket had been removed from her shoulders. The Indian girls did not seem to care, though. They were more immodestly dressed in tight fitting clothes. The boys entered at an opposite door. A small bell was tapped. Each of the pupils drew a chair from under the table. The writer pulled out hers. She at once slipped into it from one side. She turned her head. She found that she was the only one seated. All the rest at their table remained standing. She began to rise. A second bell sounded. All were seated at last. She heard a man's voice at the end of the hall. She looked around to see him. All the others hung their heads over their plates. She found the pale faced woman looking at her. The man stopped his mutterings. Then a third bell was tapped. Everyone picked up their knife and fork and began eating. She began to cry. This eating by formula was a difficult experience. Late in the morning, her friend Judwin told her that she had overheard the pale faced woman talk about cutting their long, heavy hair. Among their people, short hair was worn by mourners and shingled hair by cowards. Goodwin said that they had to submit because the school authorities were strong. The writer rebelled. She decided to struggle before submitting. When no one noticed, she disappeared and crept upstairs. She hid herself under the bed in a large room with three white beds in it. She heard loud voices in the hall calling her name. Even Judwin was searching for her. She did not open her mouth to answer. The sound of steps came nearer and nearer. Women and girls entered the room. They searched her everywhere. Someone threw up the curtains. The room was filled with sudden light. They stopped and looked under the bed. She was dragged out. She resisted by kicking and scratching wildly. She was carried downstairs and tied fast in a chair. She cried aloud and shook her head. Then she felt the cold blade of scissors against her neck. One of her thick braids was removed. Her long hair was being shingled like a coward's. Since the day she had come here, she had suffered insults. People had stared at her. She had been tossed about in the air like a wooden puppet. She mourned for her mother, but no one came to comfort her. Now she was only one of many little animals driven by a herder. Let us critically analyze the story. Gertrude Simmons Bonin was an extraordinarily talented and educated Native American woman who struggled and triumphed in a time when severe prejudice prevailed towards Native American culture and women. As a writer, she adopted the pen name Zitkalasa and in 1900 began publishing articles criticizing the Carlisle Indian School. Her works criticized dogma, and her life as a Native American woman was dedicated against the evils of oppression. It is a story that highlights the discrimination faced by the Red Indians in christening of USA. The story describes how a Red Indian girl was forced to wear tight school dresses and cut her hair by her school authorities in order to break her spirit, as for them long hair meant tradition, pride, and glory, while short or cut hair meant a coward, captured person, or a mourner who had death in family. The first story begins with Zitkala's first day in a boarding school, Carlisle Indian School. It is a school opened by Quaker missionaries for conversion of local tribal. Here, the Red Indians, where they are made to leave behind their own culture and accept Christianity. Zitkala describes that she really felt bad when a blanket is taken off her shoulders by the school authorities before entering into the dining hall. As for their tribe, showing skin was immodesty. She also wonders about how the other Red Indian girls agreed to wear tight clothes which were immodest according to her. Even their hair was cut short, which, according to Red Indian custom, was a sign of cowardice or death in the family. Later on, Zitkala and other girls were taken to the dining hall, where she was keenly noticed by a pale faced woman for not following the table manners. Judivin, another Indian girl, tells her that the pale faced woman had decided to cut their hair. Zitkala revolts as she does not want to look like a coward or a mourner. She hides herself under a bed in infirmary upstairs. Everyone starts searching for her and finally she is caught. She is tied up and her hair is cut down. She felt depressed and humiliated with this. She is reminded of her mother who would have comforted her during this hard time. Though she was forced to submit, her rebellion streak stayed with her, giving her commitment to pursue education, to become a worthy author, to write against social injustice. The story gives us strong messages. Education is the only tool of empowerment and to wage war against social and economic injustice. When seeds of rebellion are sown at a young age, these grow into sturdy, tall oak trees to withstand the most violent storms of life. A quick recapitulation of the story. It can be divided into three parts: her arrival to Carlisle Indian School, getting information of a long hair to be cut, and her struggle to retain her hair. Now answer a few questions on the basis of your understanding. How does the beginning of story "It Was Bitter Cold One" foretell the day for the narrator in the school? According to Zitkala, what does eating by formula mean? Why did Zitkala hide herself? And describe how Zitkala tried in vain to save her hair from being cut. Why did she want to save her hair? Thanks for watching the video. Hope the content was useful to you.